Welcome to my YouTube channel, Life Sciences by Selane. I am Selane, a teacher from Milner High School, and today we are going to be looking at the topic Response to the Environment by Plants. This is going to be a series containing 4 different lessons. Therefore, this series will contain 4 different videos. On today's video, or on today's lesson rather, we will be looking at the following. We will be looking into the introduction of plant hormones. What are plant hormones and what are they used for in terms of response to the environment by plants? We are going to be looking at the general functions of one particular type of hormone called auxins, and then we will be looking at one of the functions of the auxins, which is apical dominance. And as usual, we will be doing exam type activities, and in this video we will be looking at activity 1 to activity 3, just to assess whether the lesson was productive or not. This topic is a topic in your term 3 at your schools. It's supposed to take 1 week to fully teach and assess. It is going to be assessed in your paper 1 for your preliminary examination and your final examination, and it will constitute 13 marks. So it is a relatively short topic, but important nonetheless. So here are the examination guidelines. If you want to make note of the things that you need to know in terms of this topic, there they are over there. You can take a screenshot or you can make a note if you don't have these examination guidelines. So let's get right into it. Okay, as for the introduction to this topic, we often think that because plants do not have a nervous system, they are not able to respond to the environment. We could not be more wrong. Plants, just like any other organism, do respond to the environment. It is actually quite crucial for plants to respond to the environment. Why? Because plants also need certain things from the environment in order to survive. Let's think about what things that plants use in order for survival. Okay, plants require sunlight, for example, to be able to photosynthesize, to make their own food. All right, so there must be a way in which plants grow or react in order to attain sunlight. Plants also require water, okay, and they require water for photosynthesis. They require water for the metabolic activities that take place in their individual cells. All right, so there must be a certain way that plants are able to react or able to respond in order to attain the water from the soil. Plants need carbon dioxide. Plants produce flowers. Certain plants produce flowers. Certain plants produce fruits and things like that. So it is very much crucial, just like any other organism, for plants to be able to respond to the environment. 1, to attain the things that they need from the environment, or rather the resources that they need from the environment in order to survive. And 2, to a certain extent, to avoid danger. What danger am I talking about? Remember, plants are producers in the ecosystem, so they are producers of food. They are susceptible to be eaten by herbivores. They are susceptible to be damaged by insects. They are susceptible to disease from pathogens, right? Certain viruses and bacteria. So plants must be able to evade that danger in order for them to survive and thrive. So that's what this whole topic is about. To not just see plants as passive organisms that are just sitting there and not able to respond to their environment. However, plants, on the contrary, are actually actively able to respond to the environment. And because plants do not have a nervous system like you and I, they don't have a brain, they don't have eyes, they don't have neurons that pass messages from one part of the body to the next part of the body. They rather use a more passive way, or a rather a chemical way, to elicit certain growths or elicit certain movements in order for them to respond to the environment. And they use chemicals called plant hormones or chemicals called plant growth factors. So that is the gist of this topic. So we are going to find out how different plant hormones or different plant growth factors are able to help the plant to survive, to attain certain resources from the environment, for them to survive, for them to grow, for them to thrive in the environment. Okay, so in this topic, we will study the following. We are going to look at, this is a mistake, it's not supposed to be 3 plant hormones, it's supposed to be 4 actually. We are going to study 4 plant hormones, which are auxins, gibberellins, and abscisic acid or abscisic acid. Okay, so it's actually 3, yes. So the auxins, the gibberellins, and the abscisic acid. Where are they produced in the cell? I mean, where are they produced in the plant body? And what functions do they perform in order to help the plants to respond to the environment? Secondly, we are going to look at control of weeds using the plant hormones. And then we are specifically going to look at the roles of auxins in what we call phototropism, geotropism, and apical dominance. Don't worry about these 3 terms for now. They will make sense as we go along. And then this plant defense mechanisms is tied to that. We will do that together in the very last lesson of this series. All right, now let's look at the first type of plant hormones called auxins and what are their general functions. Okay, now before we look at the general functions of auxins, let us look at our plant body. Okay, plants also have organs, guys. Excuse me. Plants also have organs. Plants are generally divided into 2 main parts. We have the roots, which are all the parts that we find under the soil. So this dotted line represents the soil surface. So anything that is found under the soil, we generally refer to as the root region of the plants. I'm sure we know about that. And then anything that is found above the soil region, we are going to refer as the shoot. Okay. The shoot would include the stem. So on the plant, there is the main stem. And then we have the side branches. In this case, the side branches are holding the leaves over there. And then at the very top there, at the top of the stem, it's a very important region where mitosis happens. And mitosis actually helps the plant. We know mitosis as a type of cell division that makes more cells for the plant to be able to grow. And that region we call, excuse me for a moment. I'm struggling to find the pen. There we go. Okay, so the region at the top there, at the tip rather, of the stem is called the apical meristem. Okay, There's the word. It is called the apical meristem. Now, what is the apical meristem? The apical meristem is the very tip of the stem and the very tip of the root. It is a region of the plant where cell division is constantly happening, where mitosis is constantly happening. It is a stem that, it is a region that contains meristematic cells. Meristematic cells are undifferentiated cells that are actively divided by mitosis. Okay, so these undifferentiated cells that are actively dividing by mitosis in animals, remember we call them stem cells. All right, but in plants we don't call them stem cells, we call them meristematic cells. So these are cells that are able to differentiate into any type of cell, and because mitosis is happening at the very tip of the stem, it causes the stem to grow in an upward position. All right? And then we also have a meristematic region at the tip of the root over there, at the tip of the roots. And because mitosis occurs at the tip of the root and the root grows downwards, the plant root actually grows in a downward position. So the apical meristem is a region that is found at the tip of the shoot and the tip of the root. It contains meristematic cells. It contains meristematic cells, which are undifferentiated cells that are actively dividing by mitosis. All right? And therefore, like I said, the site is called the apical meristem. So, in these meristematic regions, tip of the root and tip of the shoot, that is where primarily most of the auxins are produced. Okay, we are going to talk about what auxins are just now and what auxins do just now, but I just wanted you to know from where the auxins are produced. So the site of auxin production. Actually, auxins are produced wherever there is growth. Okay, there is growth at the lateral buds over there. There is growth at the apical bud at the tip there, and there is also growth at the tip of the main roots there, and at the tip of those side roots there is growth. That's where auxins are produced. But primarily in the plant, most auxins are produced at the tip of the stem over there and at the tip of the root over there. That's where most of the auxins are produced. Okay, now let's get into the auxins. So auxins are plant hormones that are produced at the tip of the shoot and at the tip of the root. They are responsible for, so here are the general functions of auxins that you must know. So firstly, you must know the location from where auxins are produced. We said auxins are produced mainly at the tip of the shoot and at the tip of the root, and then we said those regions are known as apical meristem or meristematic sites of the plant. The first main function is that auxins are important in the development of fruits, which will, development of flowers, which will ultimately become fruits. So for the development of fruits and development of flowers, auxins must be present in the plant. So firstly, we know before we develop a fruit, before a fruit becomes a fruit, it firstly must have been a flower. So auxins are important for the development of flowers, and ultimately the flowers, under the influence of auxins, will develop into a fruit. Second function, auxins are crucially important for the development of roots. Okay, so when a plant germinates, one of the first things that comes out of a seed is the root. Okay, and then the root will develop and become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger under the influence of auxins. So, as you can see, here is a seedling plant. As you can see, the two plants had this one main root at the beginning, and as the auxins are produced there at the tip, they are produced and they dissolve up, and then they will form these secondary roots, these adventitious roots from the main root, and that is under the influence of auxins. Abscission of leaves and ripe fruit. Now, this word abscission, what does abscission mean? Abscission means the falling off of the leaves and the falling off of the ripe fruits. Okay, so when you speak about abscission of leaves and fruits, we are in turn talking about the falling off of leaves and the falling off of ripe fruit from a plant. And then, of course, auxins are very involved in cell division, particularly mitosis, to make more cells for the plant to be able to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. So it is responsible for making more cells for the plant to grow. And then auxins are also responsible for cell elongation. So auxins are not only responsible for making more cells, they are responsible for making cells bigger and making cells longer. So the term elongate refers to making the cell longer, not necessarily bigger. So as we can see, we have the original cell there, and then under the influence of auxins, it will grow longer and longer and longer. So when you speak about cell elongation, we are talking about the cell becoming longer. And think about it, because plant organs such as the stem are made up of cells, okay? The longer their cells become, the longer that particular organ will become as well. So because we have cells of the stem, for instance, the stem is made up of cells. If their cells become longer, then the stem itself also will become longer, thus promoting stem growth. And then auxins are responsible for apical dominance. Don't worry about what apical dominance is. We are going to look at apical dominance in the next following slides. And then auxins are also responsible for tropisms, which are phototropism and geotropism. These are growth movements or bending of the plant. These tropisms we'll talk about in lesson 2. We are going to talk about phototropism in particular. And then in lesson 3, we will look at geotropism in particular in that video as well. So please go look at those videos, because they are specifically going to be details about phototropism and geotropism. So these are the main general functions of auxins. This list is not exhaustive, meaning it's not all the functions, but these are the main functions of auxins that you should know about for examination purposes. Okay, now we said that auxins are responsible for apical dominance. All right, now The next part of the lesson, we are specifically going to talk about what apical dominance is and how is apical dominance achieved through the influence of auxins. So let's talk about this apical dominance. When we talk about apical dominance is when the apical bud, let me just change my instrument quickly to a pen. When the apical bud inhibits, the word inhibit means prevents the development of lateral branches of the stem. Okay, so apical dominance is when the apical bud inhibits or prevents the development of lateral branches of the stem. Let's talk about this. Let's see how this is achieved. You must be able to explain the definition, or rather describe the definition of apical dominance. That's the first thing that you must do. So your first task is to be able to define what apical dominance is. So there is the definition there. And then secondly, you must be able to describe how apical dominance is achieved. Okay, so here are the steps. In stems, auxins are produced from the apical bud situated at the tip, meaning at the apical meristem. The auxins diffuse or move down the stem. A higher concentration of auxins at the tip inhibits the development of lateral branches closer to the tip of the stem. This means that the side branches closer to the tip of the stem will not develop much. However, branches situated closer to the base of the stem are not affected by apical dominance because there is less concentration of auxins in the lower regions of the stem. What do we mean by all that? Let's check step by step. Okay, so let's look at the first step, which describes the site from where auxins are produced. So auxins are produced from the apical bud. Okay, when you check the plant, let's look at the plant. There is our plant shoot, and then at the apical meristem, there we call this the apical bud. This is where auxins are primarily produced. Okay, so the first step over there, excuse me again, just want to change my pointer. The first step, in stems, auxins are produced from the apical bud. So there is the apical bud. Where is it situated? At the tip of the stem. So they, that region we call it the apical meristem. Okay? And then when we check, we don't just have one bud there. That is the apical bud because it's found at the apical meristem at the tip. There are other buds. There's two buds there, there's two buds there, and there's two buds there. These we refer to as lateral buds. And the function of the lateral buds is to form side branches in the stem. Okay, that is the function of the lateral buds. They form side branches. So there we have our main stem. Those are not side branches. These are actually leaves. Okay, so the job of the lateral buds is to form the lateral branches, the side branches of the plant. All right, so we have two main buds there. The apical bud over there, which produces auxins, and then the lateral branches, the lateral buds form lateral branches. Okay, so let's go back to our steps in describing apical dominance. First, in stems, auxins are produced at the apical bud situated at the tip of the stem. This is called the apical meristem. So auxins will be produced from there. Then number two, second bullet, the auxins diffuse or move down the stem. So the auxins, as they're being produced by the apical bud, they diffuse, they move down by diffusion. They move down the stem in that direction. So they move down the stem in that direction. Okay? And then third bullet, a higher concentration of auxins at the tip inhibits the development of lateral branches closer to the tip of the stem. So, because auxins are produced there, at the apical bud there, and the auxins diffuse down, they move down the stem like that, there will be a greater concentration of auxins at the tip of the stem, and as the auxins diffuse down the stem, there will be less and less and less and less and less auxins. Okay, so at the tip there, we will have the greatest concentration of auxins, right? And as we move down the stem, okay, let me give the regions numbers. Region 1, and then let's say this is region 2, closer down, and let's say region 3, the furthest down. So because auxins are produced, there in region 1, that region will have the greatest concentration of auxins, and the auxins move down the stem, right? So the further down the stem we go, the less auxins we have. So region 2 will have less auxins than region 1, and then as we move down the stem to region 3 will have the least concentration of auxins. All right, so let's look at that bullet again. A higher concentration of auxins at the tip there inhibits, remember the word inhibits means prevents the development of the lateral branches closer to the tip of the stem. So where we have a high concentration of auxins over there, that will inhibit or prevent the lateral buds from developing lateral branches. So this high concentration of auxins, in actual fact, keep the lateral buds dormant, or it keeps them inactive. Okay, it prevents them from being active and producing lateral branches. Okay, so the high concentration of auxins keeps these guys, the lateral buds, these guys, keeps them dormant. It inhibits them from producing or developing lateral branches. And the higher the concentration of auxins, the more the lateral buds will become inactive and not produce lateral branches. And where did we say the auxin concentration is highest? It is highest at the tip. It is highest there. Therefore, these lateral branches at region 1, these lateral branches are exposed to the greatest concentration of auxin. Therefore, they will be inhibited from forming lateral branches. As we go down, these ones are exposed to less auxins, so the inhibition or the the dormancy will be less, and these ones over here are exposed to the least concentration of auxin. Therefore, the inhibition will be even less there. Okay, let me change my instrument again. Laser pointer. So the higher concentration of auxins at the tip inhibits the development of lateral branches closer to the tip of the stem. This means that the side branches, let me underline or rather highlight. Let's check. This means that the side branches closer to the tip. Oh, what is it doing now? What is it doing? Yes. Okay. There we go. This means that the side branches closer to the tip of the stem, will not develop much. Next bullet, however, the branches situated closer to the base. The side branches situated closer to the base. What's happening now? Guys, pen. There we go. The side branches closer to the base of the stem, meaning they are not affected by apical dominance because there is less concentration of auxins in the lower regions of the stem. Okay, now, what does this all mean? To consolidate, auxins produced by the apical bud. Auxins produced by the apical bud. There is our apical bud. What do auxins do? They inhibit the lateral buds from producing lateral branches. And this is called apical dominance. Okay? Apical dominance. So, the region where the plant experience the highest apical dominance or the highest levels of auxins are the regions that are closer to the tip, region 1. The further we go down, there is less auxins, so there will be less apical dominance. And then region 3, there is the least concentration of auxins, meaning there will be even less apical dominance. Okay, so let's look at another plant over there. What do we notice about this plant here? In this plant, the apical bud is removed. So it means at the tip there, where the apical bud was, because the apical bud is the site where auxins are greatly produced, that site of auxin production has been removed. Therefore, we have little to no auxins produced. Now, if we don't have auxins, what is going to happen? Look at what happened to the lateral branches. The lateral buds. Then the lateral buds become active, and the lateral buds will sprout or grow lateral branches. And why is that? Why do these lateral branches now start forming lateral branches? This is due to the absence of auxins. Okay, so if we want to remove the effects of apical dominance, what must we do? We must completely cut off the apical bud. If we cut the apical bud, we are cutting the source from where the auxins are produced, And then if we don't have auxins, therefore the lateral buds will sprout and the lateral branches now will grow. What was keeping the lateral buds dormant or inactive? It was the high concentration of auxins. So if we want to make the lateral buds active to produce lateral branches, then it means we must cut the source of the apical dominance, the source of the auxins, which is the apical bud. I hope this makes sense. You must know, please, firstly, you must know the definition of apical dominance, and secondly, you must know the how apical dominance occurs by the presence of auxins. All right. So, just a few points to make here. Apical dominance results in a tapered growth. This means that we have shorter side branches towards the tip. Why do we have shorter side branches towards the tip? Because remember, towards the tip, that's where we have the greatest concentration of auxins. And then when we have the greatest concentration of auxins towards the tip, it means that the side branches, or rather the lateral buds, become more inactive. And the plant will have longer branches further away from the tip. Why? Remember, the further down we go, the less concentration of auxins, therefore the less apical dominance. The lateral branches there will be more active and produce, or rather sprout, to form more side branches. So this gives trees their classical rectangular shape. So let's check. Why do these trees have this type of shape? I'm going to repeat this again. Where do we find the apical bud? Remember, we said that we find the apical bud there at the tip of this tree. All right? So the apical bud will secrete or release more auxins. So there will be greatest concentrations of auxins there. Let's call it region 1. And then the region where we have the most auxins is where we expect the highest degree of apical dominance. So the more the auxins produced there, then the more the auxins will inhibit the lateral buds from producing lateral branches. And then auxins are produced there, and remember, auxins diffuse down the tree, right? The auxins diffuse down the tree. So the further down we go on the tree, remember what happens? The further down we go, the less auxins we have. So region 2 will have less auxins, and region 3 will have the least auxin concentration. Okay, so the further down the tree we go, the less auxins produced. Therefore, the lateral branches will be formed by the by the lateral buds. And then in region 3, closer to the base of the stem there, that's where we have the least auxins. That's why we see the most development of lateral branches. All right, so this is what gives this tree its rectangular growth. And then we consider this particular tree, the first one and the second one, we consider it as having strong apical dominance. Why? Because these trees have an apical bud. Okay, but what happens if you remove the apical bud? What happens if you cut the apical bud? If you cut the apical bud, you are decreasing the concentration of auxins at the tip, and then the tree will have, as you can see on this tree over there, as you can see on this tree over there, the last tree over there, if you cut the tip, then the tree will form more lateral branches or more side branches. And as you can see, trees that do not have apical dominance, they grow shorter as compared to trees with apical dominance. Trees with apical dominance grow very, 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 very tall. And we'll speak in the next slide why that is the case. So if you cut the apical bud, then there will be even distribution of auxins, and then lateral branches will be able to form. More lateral branches will be able to form. All right. Now, for the last time, I know that I've milked this point for a long time, but it's very much important for you to understand the relationship between auxin concentration and the development of lateral branches. So here is the relationship. Please make notes. The greater the concentration of auxins closer to the tip, the greater the apical dominance. Therefore, if we have greater apical dominance, there will be less lateral branches that will grow. Okay, bullet number 2, the lesser the concentration of auxins, this usually as further down the stem, the lesser the apical dominance. If we have less concentration of auxins, therefore we have less apical dominance, therefore more lateral branches will grow. This is because there is a greater concentration of auxins towards the tip of the stem and less concentration of auxins further away from the tip of the stem. Therefore, apical dominance is greater towards the tip and less further away from the tip. This relationship you must understand very, very well. Okay, I hope by now you get it, guys. And sorry for driving this across and explaining it and re-explaining it over and over and over, but it is quite important for you to understand it. Okay, something that you'll be also examined on are the advantages of apical dominance in nature. For example, in forests, plants with more apical dominance will grow taller. This is supposed to be a point. Plants with apical dominance will grow taller than those with less apical dominance. And what is the implication of this? Apical dominance allows plants to grow taller, 1 mark, for maximum exposure of its leaves to sunlight for maximum photosynthesis. So there must be another point there. Maximum exposure to sunlight. The taller the plant becomes, the more it will be exposed to sunlight. Why? Sunlight is needed for photosynthesis. And if the trees become, or the plants become taller and taller and taller and taller and taller, they will outcompete the shorter plants, meaning the shorter plants will get less sunlight and those that grow taller will get more sunlight. And then because the plant grows taller, it stands out more. So if it stands out more, it will be an easier target, right, for the pollinators. So it will be pollinated easier to ensure maximum pollination. Okay, so the more pollination we get, the more fruits we can potentially get from the plant. And then apical dominance helps the plant to have an upright position for the seeds to be dispersed easily. So that for the seeds that fall from that particular plant to be able to be distributed by wind easier. All right, so we have a forest there. As you can see, there's a lot of competition for sunlight, for example. Okay, so the plants that will get, or rather in this instance, the trees that will get more sunlight are the trees that grow the tallest. And then the trees that grow under them will grow in the shade, right? So they will receive less sunlight. So apical dominance ensures that plants grow to be tall for maximum exposure to sunlight in order for the plants to get maximum photosynthesis. And by that doing, they outcompete the shorter plants, as the shorter plants will get less sunlight than those that grow taller. I hope that makes sense. And because we said they stand out, they are taller, they are easily more accessible to pollinators to ensure maximum pollination. And then thirdly, if they produce seeds, then the seeds will be easily dispersed to the ground. And if wind blows, wind will blow the seeds further away. So they might fall there, or there. So it increases the surface area for seed dispersal. I hope this makes sense. And then we have already spoken about this, so I'm going to fly very quick in this slide. How to remove apical dominance. Here's the answer. To remove apical dominance, you need to cut the source of apical dominance. You do this by cutting the apical bud. So you cut the apical bud out. This will cause there to be no auxins at the tip of the stem. Therefore, the lateral branches may grow evenly, and then the plant will therefore grow more lateral branches. Is this a good thing that the plant produces more more lateral branches? We said naturally in nature, apical dominance is a good thing because the plant grows taller for maximum exposure to sunlight, for maximum exposure to pollinators, and maximum seed dispersal, right? So naturally in the ecosystem, it's a good thing, apical dominance. But is it a good thing for there to be less apical dominance where the plant grows more lateral branches and grows shorter? It's good commercially for businesses in agriculture. Why? Let's look at this tree. So we said that we cut the apical bud. When we cut the apical bud, there will be less auxins. If there are less auxins, then it means the lateral buds will become more active in order to form lateral branches. And if this happens, look at this tree over here. This tree is a fruit tree. Excuse me. This tree is a fruit tree. As you can see, it is bearing flowers, which later will become fruits. Trees with less apical dominance form more branches, and they do not grow tall as those trees with apical dominance. Question: is it a good thing to have more lateral branches on a tree? Let's check. There is a commercial advantage to it, especially commercially in fruit farming. You should know this, please. The first thing, the plant will grow more lateral branches, 1 mark. More lateral branches will make the plant not to grow tall, 1 mark, resulting in more surface area. So the more branches you have, the more surface area you have to grow fruits. Okay? So the more lateral branches, the more fruits that plant will be able to potentially bear. And then in addition, the fruits are closer to the ground. Remember, we said that these plants do not grow very tall. The fruits are closer to the ground, and if they are closer to the ground, then human beings are able to pick them very easily, as opposed to a very tall tree. How are we going to get to the very tip of the tree to where the fruits are? But if the tree grows shorter and bears more fruit, it means that it will have more fruit, and the fruit are more accessible to pick them. I mean, human beings are able to pick them more easier. So this is an advantage for commercial farming. Okay, having less apical dominance. Please take notes of this or a screenshot of this. It will come up in the exam, I promise you. So there is a fruit tree with less apical dominance. As you can see, it has more lateral branches. It having more lateral branches, it doesn't grow to be very tall. And then the more lateral branches it has, the more fruits it's going to bear. And because it doesn't grow tall, the fruits are easily picked by the farmers. Same goes with that particular one. All right.